Hello, welcome back to Framework. This is our first show of the new year. I'm Al Schwartz. With me, as always, is John Bernard.
I'm John Bernard. Hello.
Hey there, John. Did you watch Wonder Woman 1984?
I certainly did on Christmas Day, like any good American.
Yes, and a lot of the bad ones, I assume, since there was nothing else to be done.
That's right. Yeah, that was everyone's movie this year.
And I was so asking, what's going on with this movie?
Oh, I'm not in any position to answer that. It's it's a weird one.
I just felt like I got more and more confused as it went on, and I have never. The classic canard that we talk about all the time with these blockbuster movies is the whole just turn your brain off and let the movie do its thing. And I don't think
If
it's
I'm
ever been quite as active of a process for me in this movie, um, with the entire central conceit of the wishing stone. We're just going to go ahead and spoil everything, right?
yeah. You've already seen Wonder Woman 84 by now. Yeah, sure. It's weird. It doesn't it really challenges you to keep abreast of what's going on. It's
Required like so much. It's every scene seemed to hinge on like the technicalities of how this you know, magic lamp genie wish granting mechanic worked. Uh, and yet that also seemed to be shifting from scene to scene how it actually worked.
it couldn't have been less clear. Like, yeah. I mean, Maxwell Lord, the villain, or is he the protagonist?
Uh,
uh,
I mean, he's certainly the most active character. He's got
yeah.
the goal.
Uh-huh.
He's running around, but that's often true of villains in superhero movies, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Uh-huh. There's definitely cases where that applies. I mean, like the Tim Burton Batman movies are basically about their villains,
I
for
mean, Nolan
example.
Batman movies are also definitely true in this case. Like, the superheroes tend to be reactive, and the villains are the ones that have the master plan that they're pursuing more.
Yeah, and you can do that. You can do that. I don't know why you would want to do that with Maxwell Lord.
Yes, they had a take on Maxwell Lord as a Donald Trump stand-in, uh,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
and that is appropriate here. And it also sort of, since they had settled on the conceit that this was going to be set in 1984, even though it didn't really need to be for any particular reason. But uh, you know, Donald Trump is a creature, a relic of the 80s. Even as
Yeah.
we currently live in the quote unquote Trump era, he's still he has never progressed personally out of 1988.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely all the things that I don't know, because it's not really doing Gordon Gekko stuff. He's a schemer, and he's kind of he's a confidence man, really, and he's but he's not like a businessman, really. He's not really about wealth. He's more about power.
it's yeah. So I guess it does tie the 80s in terms of it being the decade that was defined by greed, and his whole wish granting thing is all about promising people, everything for nothing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
can't get something for nothing. Is the ultimate sort of moral that the movie settles on, I guess. Um,
Yeah, I guess it's you can't get something for nothing. I mean, as clearly stated as whatever. Be careful what you wish for. Any sort of like one sentence sort of parable you could just slam onto this about wishes would be appropriate, I suppose. It's
well, I think the script does it very awkwardly in that it phrases it as like, you can't, as a thing about truth and lies and how you can't build like a real victory off of lies, and it's supposed to be a victory for the truth. But I think it would be a lot more uh, directly resonant if it was more but phrased in a way that was more like you can't get something for nothing.
yeah. I mean,
That's just as apropos to the whole Donald Trump surrogate thing. And I mean, he's
I
all
don't think that really works either, to be honest. The Trump thing. I mean, he's first off, they made him very sympathetic. It seems like an odd way to go if you're going to make your villain a like a con artist who is willing to destroy the world for the acquisition of power, and explicitly make him like Donald Trump, but also make him sort of the emotional linchpin of the film. I many weird choices made with his character.
I mean, I guess he is the emotional infinite of the finale anyway, um, which
Uh,
is strange to me because the parts of this movie that
yeah.
me are Diana's relationship to Steve Trevor and Barbara, the cheetah lady.
Would I mean, I guess those are the better part. Well, those are the parts that involve Wonder Woman, at least. I mean, that's that's the one point in their favor. You know, they're those are part of a Wonder Woman movie. Those storylines.
Well, and
Maxwell
they're
Lord is this other thing.
yeah, and those relationships are comprehensible in a way, like as much comic book nonsense as there is with resurrecting people from the dead and arbitrarily turning into were cheetahs. Uh, like I understand the relationships between those characters in a way that it took me forever to figure out what was going on with Maxwell Lord, and I still and then it shifted out from under my feet a couple of times. It's like, well,
Yep.
I feel like we spent the whole first act of this movie based around on the premise that the wishes worked this way, and then in the second act they start working a completely different way, and then the third act that's like, yeah, they're just whatever, and you can just take them back too. Um,
Yeah, yeah. You can renounce the wish, and it's like it never happened, or does it actually erase it, or does it just go back to status quo, even though the events have still transpired? Unclear.
That's another incredible thing about this is just how like it
There's a lot of we could just point stuff out for an hour that confused us, and that would be an episode.
we're I mean our take here is probably gonna be pretty scattershot, which I think is appropriate because the movie is so scattershot. Like it just seems to change its mind about what is important to it and what it's actually getting at. So I guess one way of looking at that is what this does, how this fits into the broader DC universe is
Oh
sort of
well,
like incredible to me because it seems like
it
okay, it's
it destroys it, right?
yeah,
It pretty much breaks the DCEU.
completely. And I thought it seems obvious you have to just use its wish magic so it can do whatever, and you'll just be takes backsies. It'll be one of those things that genre stories do, science fiction, fantasy stuff does, where there's a fairly apocalyptic thing that one character has to like undo, and then the world goes back to normal, and they're the only one that remembers it. But in this case, the movie ends, and it's clearly like everybody on Earth remembers this, and was hugely affected by it. The world almost ended, and every like person on Earth had a direct hand in causing that and then in undoing it, um, which is very strange that it's trying to fit in the continuity with this DC universe that establishes 30 years later, like so much effort into framing Superman's appearance as this huge seismic first contact event that shakes the world to its core. And I'm like, but now all this shit had happened in living memory. Like that world does not does not fit with this world that where this has already happened.
And what's really strange is they are seem to be making an effort to make it fit with that for a good chunk of the film, like with Wonder Woman avoiding cameras and nobody really knowing who she is or what her story is, or that she is still this inactive
Why?
character, and they keep her off camera from the world camera at the end of the movie. So technically, I guess we haven't seen her kind of thing, when we do have, there's going to be mall footage of this at the minimum. But
Yeah. Well, she destroys the camera. Maybe that. I mean,
I,
it's it's
yeah,
whatever. But the entire like this is the Cuban Missile Crisis or 9/11 times 8 million.
yeah.
Like
I,
it's
yeah, you
and
remember that thing where in 1984 where a genie took over the world for a
yeah,
while, and like there was walls of rock bursting out of the ground, and we almost all died in the Bay of Pigs situation, except magic. And
yeah. And it's not like you can pull any of that sort of bullshit hand wavy stuff they do with like a Ghostbusters 2 or like Sunnydale and Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where it's like, well, people have this amazing capacity to like compartmentalize and deny the things that don't fit in their worldview. Like every
those,
human on Earth just got direct interaction with and confirmation of magic in their lives. Like they all made the wish and then got to see it immediately
they all renounced
manifest
it
in their
too.
lives, and then renounced it and undid it. Like
Which
there's
we gotta talk about that, because that's the weirdest, thing of all. Because I mean, this has been brought up in a lot of reviews. When you actually think about this, it doesn't work, because all we see are selfish wishes. Like, oh, I wish I had my old boyfriend back, or I wish I
oh
was
yeah,
more powerful. I wish I was a cat person. But like a lot of these wishes are going to be like, I wish my dead child was alive again,
Yes.
stuff like that. I wish, that I hadn't lost my leg. These are wishes that people are
Mm.
not just going to be like, okay, I renounce it. It's it's nuts. It's like
And
they didn't think it through.
some of them, a lot of them are going to contradict other people's wishes. So is it first in or like last in, first out? I don't.
Yeah, how
And
many
then
people want to be president or a movie star or whatever? Yeah.
right when one one's like, I wish I was famous. I'm like, well, okay, but if 30% of the world wishes to be famous today, like there's like a weird inflation thing. Of like, what does it mean to be famous now? Like, you can't. Does every like are people's brains exploding because I now need to keep like 18 million names in my head instead of the like 500 or 600 people that I can track and have a vague idea of their identity at any given point.
Oh
I
man, yeah, the chaos going on in this corridor of time here. The like, I wish all the Irish got rounded up and carted out like that. That's going on, and
and
that's
also
just what we see.
the other part that is that as I'm led to believe these mechanics work. Um, what about some of the people? There's got to be some people that in the times like saw Maxwell Lord's first broadcast that promised them, like told them about the whole wish thing and that they could just make a wish and it would happen. And they do it. And then all the chaos erupts. And then some people are no longer going to be around a TV, either because they were killed or rounded up for being Irish and are now in the
Yeah,
back of a paddy wagon or whatever, or were wished out of existence by somebody else, or
right. Yeah, there's those guys.
any number of things. But like in across the entire world, where there's a billion people doing this, like there's gonna be some stragglers there that don't get to hear the second part of the message and don't get the part about renouncing it. Um, Even if you did accept that everybody gets on board. I mean, obviously, there's 8 million logical errors you can nitpick about this, and it's comic book logic, so it kind of doesn't matter. Um,
Right. I mean, that was the thing with this. This was like a silver age, like
mhm.
a silly movie, like a silly movie where there's a genie or a rock genie or whatever you ultimately call what's going on in this movie. I can appreciate that.
So, but
uh,
my sticking point about this stuff is that
yeah.
there's some stuff I don't care about because it's comic book logic and whatever. I don't
Hmm.
need more of an explanation for why she turned into a cheetah lady.
I
You know,
do. I could have used more there.
it would have
Just
been very easy to fit in.
yeah.
uh, but I guess they only had, I don't know, how long is this movie? Like 3 weeks and 4 hours long.
It's 2.5.
Yeah.
It feels it. Yeah. Uh-huh.
We watched it over 2 nights. It was our like Christmas Eve, you know,
Mm,
family night, but then it got to be bedtime. So we said, okay, well,
yeah.
we promise you
Well,
won't finish it without you.
we don't need to finish this tonight. Sure.
Yeah. But both times, like by the end of that session, I was like, okay, I'm really ready for a break. It was
Yeah,
a lot there.
it's a bit of a chore.
Oh.
I'm afraid, which is a bummer because this was the big superhero movie for the year. This was like the dessert at the end of a bad year for everybody. At least we can watch a Wonder Woman movie
Yeah.
here at home, and that'll be nice.
And the first one was great.
Yeah, the first
Still.
one. I mean, even if you're not a big fan of it, it is clearly like a competent,
Hmm.
fun. There's nothing bad about that one. It works. It's fun.
No, I mean you can critique it.
Mhm.
It's ripping off Captain America: First Avenger pretty wholesale. Just
Yeah,
removing one eye from the war, but it's overall, it's got a really good heart. It's got some good central performances, good relationships, nice, a couple great sequences, and it's just nice, pleasant movie. And this is
yeah.
a somewhat pleasant mess for a lot of the time. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't furious watching this. I know some people were. I mean, like I've read reactions online, but people I know in real life have been quite mad about this film. Some of them. I received a bunch of texts the other day, just a rant about Wonder Woman 84, and then like 4 texts in, it was just like, oh, sorry, this was meant for a different thread. It was just random Wonder Woman anger coming at me. Um, um, it's I'm surprised this ended up being one of these controversial films, one of these movies that everyone's going to feel very strongly about one way or the other. This is like in the Last Jedi camp, or well, I don't know. Are people going to be talking about this in a few months? Probably not. But coming as
You
it
know,
does this year, it seems like everyone's really on edge about Wonder Woman 84.
I have to think that it'll kind of blow over pretty quickly, but maybe not. One of the things I think that I would find this all like I can bitch about it with you all day long, but it's more just like I mean I'm gonna giggle while I do it because
Yeah,
it's just amusing how nonsensical uh, this stuff is about like the basics of its narrative movements. But
that's true. I'm not at all mad about this movie. Is the
no, because
thing
it's kind of a
like
good time anyway.
it's the bad stuff is kind of fun in a sense.
But if I had any investment in the larger DC universe, I think the stuff that I find kind of amusingly nonsensical about it would be genuinely aggravating.
That's true. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. If this was a Marvel film doing this, it would bother me more somehow
yeah,
because
because I'm way more invested in those movies. I mean,
yeah,
not that I take them super seriously. Like I'm fine with them being what they are, but they have a good thing going where they're cohesive. They make sense
yeah,
on the comic book level that they need to. Um,
and they have successfully created a world that is consistent. That's a thing.
yes,
Yeah,
yes, and DC is really just throwing up their hands about that. They said, screw it. We're gonna let Zack Snyder redo Justice League in his 4 hour edge lord glory.
yeah, and
That'd be
which will be
great.
canon? Who fucking cares? It doesn't matter. I mean
Yeah.
that's the sense I get. Like, it
Well, but
doesn't
maybe
matter.
I'm wondering if this is like contributing to some of the rancor over this movie. Is that there is sort of this like civil war within the DC fan base about is it
Hmm.
uh,
Yeah,
what is the true canon? Is it going to be the Zack Snyder's auteur uh,
mind melting. God.
vision, or is it going to be more the like sort of lightweight, frothy Patty Jenkins um, end of it? I don't know that they're actually like the avatars of the two different sides exactly. I think Joss Whedon has become sort of the punching bag on one side, which I think is kind of ridiculous. Like he feels like a
Yeah.
substitute teacher who came in to like do the last 2 days of school and is now like it's 3 years later. Why are people
It does
still
seem like,
blasting me in
God,
their yearbooks?
like he was kind of a dick as a substitute teacher, and everyone was really unhappy about it.
I mean, we don't.
Look, I don't care what your old teacher said. This is what we're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. We don't need to get into the entire Ray Fisher thing as
Oh
well. But
no, I mean it's all emblematic rather of a franchise that is just off the rails though. Like
yeah,
it couldn't be more off the rails. Like Joker is part of this somehow. That was a movie that was nominated for Best Picture, won a bunch of Oscars last year. Has
but
nothing to do with any of them.
yeah, that's not
It's
supposed to be an actual continuity with anything, is it?
no,
Like, is
no.
the Robert Pattinson Batman going to be? Is Joaquin Phoenix supposed to be his Joker, or is Jared Leto supposed to be his Joker? Or is he going to have his own
I
entirely?
believe it's a third continuity. I believe. Although, and I know that they're bringing Michael Keaton back in the Flash, which would be a fourth continuity, unless they do decide that Joaquin Phoenix is going to fight Robert Pattinson, which they could, and it wouldn't break anything less than Wonder Woman 84 did.
Okay, I haven't seen Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie still, or I've never seen any of the ones with
It's
Jared Leto's Joker either. I have the DC movies I haven't seen are the villain led ones, Suicide Squad, Harley Quinn, and Joker.
it's interesting because I would say those are probably the best and worst of the somehow at the same time of the whole thing. But mostly that speaks to how little I kind of regard the rest of the movies.
Yeah,
Birds of Prey is kind of good, kind of like you don't need to see it or anything, but it's I like it. It's really violent. It's sort of I don't know. It's
had a
taking
solid
cues
cast,
from
but I guess they all have. So
yeah, they all do. It's sort of taking cues from other stuff. It's very much doing Deadpool and John Wick. I mean, like what if
hmm.
Deadpool was John Wick and it was Margot
Well, isn't
Robbie? That
Deadpool already kind of like have John Wick's skill set, and he's a super assassin?
yeah, I don't know. I mean, the movie itself is kind of more I guess yeah, basically. It's Deadpool with John Wick action scenes, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
which is to say hyper violent and incredibly well choreographed, and I mean totally dissimilar than the rest of the film for sure. But like it, they're notable in that way. I mean, she's like breaking people's arms in half and stuff like that. you know,
Harley Quinn is?
oh yeah, it's like a hard R, bloody, really really violent movie.
Huh.
Yeah, it's a little odd actually that she's doing it too. Like kind of just have to take for granted that all of a sudden she is an incredibly trained at John Wick assassinations and karate and
Yeah.
shit.
When we started talking about those elaborate action scenes, I just assumed it was like the other birds of prey that were doing the ass kicking mostly, because I thought she mainly just made faces and swung a giant mallet around as far as action sequences went.
No, she's cutting in people half with a shotgun. It's yeah. I mean, it's everyone in the world. Every single character in the world is capable of participating in a John Wick action scene.
Oh
Um,
my God. I
it,
just,
it,
it's still,
you don't need to see it.
but like the same year or so that the DC universe is supposedly in the same universe. They're doing Wonder Woman 84 and the movie where people are getting blown in half by shotguns. Um,
Yeah, they're going to be released like 4 months apart originally.
yeah, which is not something that would happen in Wonder Woman 1984. She's doing the
Yeah,
Batman I hate guns thing. Um,
yeah. Well, I mean, just goes to the point that there's no unifying anything behind the DCEU. These are just throwing stuff at a wall and seeing what sticks. Like
well, I mean, it started with a unifying vision.
yeah,
It was
and it
just
fell
not one
down
that
and
was, yeah.
no one liked it. Yeah, or
No,
some people liked it. I guess I don't know, but it didn't work.
it was a much more niche vision than I think they were intending it to be or ready for, and I still like not don't know how to process. Um, I mean, I guess that's
Yeah.
something that Disney is struggling with in its own way in the Star Wars series too. We compare this to the Last Jedi being another flashpoint that created a sort of civil war within the ranks of the fans. Um, but the studio seemed like they're still really struggling to differentiate between like the loudness of the fans versus like how many of them there actually are and how big of a difference that really makes. And
Oh, as am I. I think everyone is to
yeah,
some extent. Like, like is Wonder Woman 84 going to be a successful movie? I mean, who even knows? Because we have streaming metrics to consider now, but it certainly seems like it's going to be.
I mean, it seems like on whatever metric you're using for streaming, it must have
Hmm.
been a success. Like they couldn't have been expecting more like raw views or like,
Right.
and they
Uh-huh.
saw like upticks in membership to the HBO Max platform that
It
seemed,
seems
I mean,
seems like literally everybody I know saw this movie
yeah,
just in the last week. Yeah.
yeah. Um,
I
but of
mean,
course,
Soul. Disney released a big Pixar movie on the same day, and everyone seemed to really like that, but no one's really talking about it in the same way.
right.
No one's really. That's not getting a lot of purchase on social media, as far as I can see. I'm sure it's doing fine for them, but clearly, like Wonder Woman 84 is the one that people wanted to talk about, and also looks like it's the one they watched first. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's I guess aimed a bit broader into the four quadrants.
yeah, for
It's
sure.
aimed a little higher.
Yeah,
Um,
anyone can watch it. Yeah.
yeah, maybe you'll have less single men sitting down to watch Soul in their apartments until they're going to go to the superhero thing first. Still,
Yeah.
um, let's get back to the movie for a minute because we could spend hours here dissecting all of the things that don't make sense about the plot of this movie or this characterization or that.
Yeah.
Um, and some of that doesn't really matter, but at some point it does to me. Like, I mean, I did not engage with this one the way I did with the first Wonder Woman movie because that first movie was so much cleaner in its narrative and it made sense to me on its own terms, but in a simplistic way that doesn't like. Um, and so I guess what I'm most interested in examining with you is what are the rules? Like when do things need to make sense and when don't they need to make sense? Or when does it not matter with these comic book things? You know.
Well, I mean, fair enough, and I think the problem is going to be like that is going to be a different answer for everybody. Like
Yeah.
for me, I think like you, I I would say I didn't think Wonder Woman 84 was a very good movie, but I enjoyed watching it well enough. I was, engaged with it. I thought parts were fun. There was performances I kind of enjoyed. I would have to say at the end of the day, it didn't work uh,
Mhm.
for reasons that are kind of fun to talk about. So it didn't bother me in that sense. It did bother some people. Some people are
Yeah.
very upset about this movie.
There,
People
there
who,
are some stuff though that's nitpicks. Like there's some stuff that doesn't matter. I mean, some people had nitpicked about how like, well, Steve Trevor is like an old fashioned guy, but he still would have like they knew what fireworks were in 1915
yeah,
or whatever.
or elevators, yes.
Um, and I'm like, well, okay, but you can get a no prize explanation for that. Like he's been
Hmm.
surrounded by all this insane stuff, and there's currently they're investigating strange violent magic. So when he starts seeing
And they're in an invisible
explosions in the
plane.
sky, yeah,
Yeah.
it's reasonable for him to be concerned. And a lot of us have never seen fireworks from above, so that's probably a little takes you a second to process.
It would
Um,
probably look not unlike it looked in World War One, flying through the night sky there,
yeah,
while munitions are going off below him, or people trying to shoot him out of the sky. So yeah,
yeah,
he could be dealing with PTSD for all we know.
but that's a very
You can game this out.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, you could nitpick to death the entire plane sequence. It's like why doesn't
the
he
whole movie. Yeah.
what fireworks are. How does a fighter jet get from Washington D.C. to Cairo on one tank of gas? And how does he even know how to fly this thing that may as well be a spaceship when he flew in Wright brothers times? But two different things. But yeah, flying a fighter jet low enough through to go through fireworks would like be breaking windows all over DC and create this. They're trying to be sneaky and uh, it's pretty deafening if there's a plane flying below like 10,000 feet. Uh, but none of that stuff really matters.
No.
You have to just, it's enough for us to go on and get to the next scene. That's, and I think part of it's just that a movie kind of gets one or two cheats, um, especially if it's working. It gets a couple of those. Indiana Jones just gets to ride the submarine. um,
Yeah, fuck it. It's fine.
Fuck it, who cares?
Yeah, they don't go down. I guess. Whatever.
Yeah. Um, but at some point, like that doesn't it's not a completely free reign to do anything and not make any sense because I do find that in Wonder Woman's case, like the wish fulfillment whole thing does create an impenetrable barrier for me to like really engage with the movie because I don't understand really what the villain is trying to do, how he's trying to do it, what the impediments to stopping him from doing it are because the mechanics of it are completely impenetrable to me.
Yeah, I mean that's a big problem with the exposition of this film, which I suppose probably isn't that complicated, really. Like whatever the wish stone, how that works, it probably doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter. You
Well,
know,
that is a great deal for a long time that he can't grant more than one wish to one person because he's spending like an hour and a half of this movie running around constantly trying to find new people to absorb wishes from, basically. Um, and then Cheetah Lady can get a second one uh, at the end just because. And like, wait, how does that change things?
yeah, I was wondering about that, and I think they were trying to do something there. I think it wasn't just as simple as she gets two wishes. I think he was going to siphon wish power granted from the rest of the world to her because she is in the compound with him at the beginning, and then she leaves, kind of in the shadows. And next time we see her, she's a cheetah lady. They failed to explain it for sure.
I got none of that.
Maybe I'm making it up, but I thought that's what they were going for. But no, it doesn't. It was me trying to figure it out afterwards because it doesn't make sense.
Okay. I was trying to justify it as she made one wish on the original stone, and then when he like became the stone, it sort of like reset the counter, and she got another one from through him in his G.
They they could have said that. They could have just said that,
Yeah,
and I would have been like,
they didn't.
fine. Yeah.
Um, and I think what it is, it's less. It's not if I when I'm having issues with this, uh, or like another, I guess another part of it that also. stuck in my craw was for like an hour of this movie, he's running around granting wishes to people, and he's starting to like bleed out of his ears and nose, and it's clearly like taking a toll on him that granting too many wishes at once.
Yeah.
And then somehow he convinces himself that granting wishes to every person on Earth at once will cure that, which is the exact opposite of my understanding of what was going on.
Yeah,
Uh,
it seems like he'd explode like
yeah,
fairly early on. Yeah.
um, it was very. I mean, it was very confusing. And so this is not about wanting it to be more realistic. um, I just want it
No.
to be consistent.
Hmm.
You
Yeah,
know,
I mean, it seems like solving this is the central idea of the film too. You
mm,
know, like
right?
this Wishmaster idea is pretty much the whole show. That's what this movie's about ostensibly, and it seems like they didn't know how it worked. Like they couldn't really make heads or tails of it, and just decided it didn't matter. And it's like all you that's what the movie's about, is figuring out what's the deal with this wish stuff. Like
Yeah, I can't ignore it. That's the problem. Like, I can't just ignore it and move on because it's central to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing.
it's
Exactly
required for
how it
understanding
works.
the plot and themes of the movie.
Yeah, but it's I mean, especially the plot is the problem for me.
Yeah.
Um, you know, you still get a lot of leeway there. Like I would not necessarily have a problem with how for for Diana when she makes her wish and starts to lose her powers as like the price. That happens very slowly over time, and for everybody else in the world, like the negative consequence happens like comically quickly
Yeah.
within the same scene.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't know, and or like even that I could be like, okay, whatever. It's part of a. It's just it's part of the setup still. I can still
It's the
follow
movie
the thrust
concedes.
of it.
You know, it's
Um,
how long a chest burster stays in your chest,
exactly.
really, and
It's
depends on
however
how
long.
important a character you are. Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. Yes, it all depends on what how many scenes the movie needs you for. Um, and I could roll with that. You know, but it's just it every time. Every time the wishing thing came up, I felt like I had a new question about wait, that's or not even a new question, but I thought it works different than that. You know,
Yeah, like what about that thing when he goes and talks to the guy in Egypt? And he's
yeah.
like, he grants his wish, and in return, he will take his oil. And
And
then
the
he's
guy
like,
says, "I
"Oh
don't
well,
have any."
I don't have any. Oh well, then I'll take your personal guard."
Yeah,
You
like
can just do that, I
yeah,
guess.
you can just
Like,
change the rules yourself. If you can change that rule, why do you still need to run around finding new people to get wishes from? I, like
um,
you have to follow this rule very strictly for half of the movie, and then this other rule that you follow most of the time, but I guess you don't have to. I don't, it's it's all very confusing.
I mean,
And
the whole thing with "I wish that I was you, the wishing stone." Like how he says that.
right,
Uh, that seems to be like a way of getting around the one wish limit, getting around, like
mm,
I wish for more wishes, basically.
yes,
And and it's really complicated how he uses that then, which is that he has to have somebody else wish for something. And it wasn't clear to me that then he was able to name his price that he
yes.
personally extracts from the person who wishes, and he can just say what that is and it works. Like that took me about half the movie to be like,
Oh,
okay.
that's what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah, uh-huh.
Yeah, and it seems like sometimes he can't control what the price is because when it's his son or something, and he doesn't want something bad to happen. He can't just name, "Oh, okay, I'll take your pocket lint." you know.
Right, yeah,
Uh,
uh-huh.
although I'm sorry, what was this? His son made the wish. I thought that was going to be like this big dramatic thing. Of he's like, "Oh God, now I have to save my son from my own power."
Oh yeah,
Um,
that came to nothing though.
but what did his son lose something? I don't. I have no.
I don't
Still
know.
don't know.
There's a lot of questions I kind of got about like what happens to him at the end. Like
Yes, that's also a good
he's
question.
is he the what happens to Maxwell Lord at the end of this film? The movie doesn't tell you. Does he get arrested? Uh, the entire world has seen his face, presumably, and associates him
He, he
with
was already
the
famous.
the Wish Cataclysm of 1984 or whatever this is.
Yeah.
Do they execute him? Does nothing happen to him? Is it all forgotten because he renounced his wish? I have no idea. I have no
And
idea if he walks away or what at the end of this movie.
and that is more important, I think, to in a story sense. It's a resolution sense
Yeah.
than nitpicking about plot mechanics about like why does Marine One still take him back to the White House after he's renounced the wish to have the president's
Yeah,
authority. Uh,
yeah, like that breaks the whole thing. You can't even ignore it at that
yeah.
point. And
Why do the Soviets missiles blow up when the U.S. renounces their wish? Because the Soviets didn't wish for more nukes, I don't think. I mean, and
some of them did, I'm sure,
maybe,
but yeah, maybe. Uh,
uh,
but yeah, that was a retaliation for the original rockets that were wished into existence. So those would be
yeah,
pre-existing rockets that went off.
right. At least some of them, you would think. So even if
Yeah.
the U.S. ones, they're traveling this way, disappear in midair. I guess. I mean, whatever. We can get
This is
around this. We can say that the Russians have a button that undoes them in midair, and they press it in time.
okay.
Who
Okay.
cares?
But I mean, this is like the problem is that you can do this with this movie, and you can do this with other movies that are kind of
Mm,
famously bad. You know, I mentioned Indiana Jones, Raider. You know, in Raiders of the Lost Ark, it doesn't matter. In Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, this is kind of all you do when you watch that movie. It's like,
yes.
wait a minute. So it's a movie that kind of forces you to kind of break it apart as you're watching it, or maybe just us. You know, people who do a podcast about movies and think about
Right.
movies too much. But you know, I don't know why all of a sudden. No, I guess I do know why, and the reason is like it doesn't give you much else to do here. Like you're kind of just sitting here thinking about this stuff while you watch it. I wasn't emotionally involved in it really, so I
I
wasn't.
think what Raiders of the Lost Ark is so much better at, though, in terms of comic book logic, or even like the James Bond movies when they're good are good at
Yeah,
this too, and the Marvel movies better. Is that you use the silliness and the comic book nonsense to make things simpler and
yeah.
easier to follow from one
Hmm.
scene to another, and
Oh, that's a
it
good
doesn't
way
really
of looking
matter.
at it.
Um,
Yeah,
and it felt like in this movie, especially, the nonsense was making it harder to follow at every turn. What was going on and what the actual plan was, what the threats were, um, and it. I don't know. This is a movie that is a sort of amiable, you know, fun enough time, but it was also felt like a lot of work to follow as an audience member.
I think also, like you said, you like watching the movie again. I wasn't mad. It's kind of the only way to talk about it, though, is to, in
Yeah.
retrospect, to be like, what so what actually, how does that work? There's nothing in this that is like, wow, masterstroke storytelling there. No, there's
No.
nothing that really allows you to kind of reflect on or enjoy after the fact, other than just the what is all this stuff supposed to mean? That's becomes what the movie is in my memory.
Yeah. I mean, I think what I really like.
Let's say some nice
Uh,
things about it. Let's
yeah.
talk
Yeah.
about the good stuff in Wonder Woman 84, because it's not an unpleasant film to watch or anything.
The best stuff to me in both the Wonder Woman movies is whenever Chris Pine and Gal Gadot are together. Um, that
They're a good movie
relationship
star
stuff.
couple, yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, they're great. She's not quite on the level of star power or whatever that she can kind of carry a movie the way that I don't know Tom Cruise or Robert Downey Jr. does just solely on her own. But when she's paired with somebody good, she's really good. And Chris Pine, like that whole relationship, that romance was surprisingly believable for how sort of ridiculously, how steeped in comic book nonsense it all is. And it ripped off the Captain America resolution to that romance pretty shamelessly, but it still worked really well. And now it's ripping off the sort of Captain America fish out of water stuff once he's brought up to the closer to the present day. But that was still the most fun part of the movie. I mean,
Yeah, and they're like both of them together works. She's really good in relationships on screen, I would
mm,
say. I think that's maybe, aside from being shockingly, stunningly gorgeous, maybe her secret power
yeah.
as a movie star. If you recall, like, you've seen the Fast and Furious movies?
Nope. Just the
Okay,
just the first one.
well, she is in a few of them, 5 and 6, I think, probably the best ones when you get down to it.
So
Um,
I've heard.
and she has a relationship with another guy, a character named Han, and this is the best relationship in the Fast and the Furious movies. Like, this is by far the most engaged you are with characters, or at least I'm sure some people really feel about Dom and Letty, but like that is something Vin Diesel does not have in his toolbox that Gal Gadot
Right.
does. That she is able to create real chemistry, and that relationship, they're minor characters. They're like ninth, 10th leads in those movies. They pop though, they work, and they
Yeah.
bring them back in the next movie, and they're with larger roles. And when Gal Gadot's character dies in that movie, spoiler, it is probably the most significant emotional thing in the films up till that point. I mean,
Mm.
they get the Paul Walker stuff later, but
Yeah,
it's
it's kind of thrust on
probably
them.
it's the relationship in those movies that really works for me watching them. Involves Gal Gadot and this other character actor,
Yeah.
basically. Uh, she's
Well, I think
really
just
good at
the
that
whole
stuff.
romance angle, and that it allows her to experience tragedy and loss and be vulnerable in a way that is always the most interesting thing for a character that's defined by invulnerability to
This is a good point. Yeah,
play.
they've never
Uh,
really screwed around with her having like a physical threat against her. Like that's never been a thing. Even in the Justice League movies, she's about as indestructible as anyone else.
yeah. Um, well, and this, but what Wonder Woman 84 does too is the classic superhero sequel thing. Like every second superhero movie involves them losing their powers. It seems like
Yeah,
uh, from Superman 2 to Spider-Man 2, X-Men 2 was built around. Oh no, the Cure doesn't come until 3, I guess, in that one.
right.
Um,
Well, yeah, it's fine.
but
Spider-Man 2 and Superman 2 are classics. These are
right,
like, this is what you do.
yeah. I mean, it's more than that. I mean, Batman in The Dark Knight is going to give up being Batman. That's always like a thing that you have to do. And this movie doesn't it introduces that as a thing, but then does nothing with it. Like never. It has her getting weaker, but never actually brings her down to human level.
Yeah, I mean, the consequence is basically other people stand a chance against her, I guess,
Right.
sometimes. Like maybe she won't be able to destroy all these tanks and save all these kids as expediently as she used to.
Yeah.
Uh,
But she
this is,
can still.
I mean, well, this is on the other hand, this is kind of why it's a no contest for her for the wish. She's just like, oh well, obviously that's fine. I just want you to be here, which leaves, of course, the possessor stuff to the side, which we'll have to get to.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah,
mean that's a whole other angle that they didn't was clearly put into some sort of purpose at some point,
hmm
and that purpose gets completely lost in the shuffle of whatever was going on with this movie's production.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, that's my theory. That is what happened. Is that it was a major plot point that Steve Trevor had stolen this person's life,
yeah,
and
it's a real complete person. They make a real
yeah,
point of that.
because it literally is unimportant. It couldn't
Yeah,
matter less, and it would be the simplest thing in the world for him to just be back, to all of a sudden just show up and like, I was wished back into existence. I'm Steve Trevor, and that would be fine within the rules that the film is set up. There, you lose nothing by doing that, except the sort of idea that they have stolen this person's life and maybe raped him. That seems to be what
yeah,
they've introduced into the story with that. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, from a technical legal standpoint, I guess, but it's comic book nonsense. I don't. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't.
I mean,
I
it's
don't
clearly
really
not the
care that
intention of the
much about
film
that.
for us to think
Yeah.
about it.
No, but it
uh,
does seem like there was another version of this movie at some point. I mean, it seems like there was multiple versions of this movie. But I mean, how you could do more with this stuff. Where if uh, there's a version where she wishes him back to life, he's now human. He doesn't even need to take over somebody else's life, but
Not at
maybe
all.
he gets a wish and wishes to be like as strong as her or whatever, and she's and then she starts losing her powers. So now it's the reverse of the first movie where he's the superpower one and she's like the normal human, and then via tweak Kristen Wiig's wish so that like she wished to be strong and like basically
Just straight
McDuff.
up. I want to be a cat person, like from the beginning.
No, but I just mean like
Yeah.
she makes it. It's more of a McDuff angle where she's saying, or I guess the Witch King is a better of the Nazgul is a better thing. Where she's like, I wish that I'd never had to fear anything from any man ever again. And it turns out he can't defeat her, even if he's as strong as Diana was. So that's why they have to renounce their wishes so that he can give the power back to her, so that she can have a shot against Cheetah Lady.
I mean,
Um,
it's something.
But there's
Cheetah.
this body swap angle and this depowering angle that don't develop into. They're just sort of dropped halfway through.
Yeah, well, she has to put on the gold uniform, so it's sort of like you want to sell this action figure kind of thing as well.
Yeah, the gold
You know
uniform does
that
nothing.
well, yeah, it allows you to sell a uniform.
Yes, I know.
uh,
I mean, like
yeah,
usually, even in like Transformers the movie, I feel like there's a little more like bare effort to make it a plot element of why the new model of armor needs to be like in somewhere. She uses it to fly, I guess, to the secret satellite base, but she already learned to fly
I don't
in the
get
movie.
that. I don't
Um,
understand if
and again,
she can
apparently
fly.
forgot between there and
Yeah,
Batman vs Superman. I
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, I I hate that. I'm just like what doesn't make sense about Wonder Woman too. I don't.
Yeah, I know, but it's everything.
It's everything. It's literally all there is to talk about in the movie. It's it's sort of the main feature of the film is all the stuff you can kind of puzzle over afterwards, I guess. Um, Cheetah,
I
that
think Kristen
character,
Wiig's great in this movie.
I really like her, and I think she was exciting casting, and
Mhm.
I do agree. I think what she does with what she's given is pretty good. I think that's kind of true of every actor in this. I don't think there's an off performance really. Um, I'm not a big
Yeah,
Gal Gadot fan in general, but like I said, she has some stuff. She's really good with Chris Pine.
yeah.
Um,
I think when she's with somebody interesting,
mhm.
she holds her own, and that's a superhero role. For as much as it's a sort of pure star vehicle, like we were talking about earlier, the villains tend to drive everything. They tend to be more reactive, and
Yeah,
when they're so powerful, like it becomes tricky to have them be really active, proactive characters. So, I mean, you don't want when Superman's rushing in to use his powers to solve every problem. It becomes this sort of nightmare thing that I think like The Boys is all about that sort of
yeah, yeah.
idea.
I
Um,
mean that's an idea, and it's about it. That's it's kind of
yeah,
what's cool about the boys, I would say.
I mean, even
As
like
a
Spider-Man 3, that's the Venom suit sort of brings that out. It was when he embraces being Spider-Man and using his powers for every somewhat
for
trivial
himself,
ends.
for
It's
himself.
villainous.
Yeah,
It makes him into an asshole. Um, and that's
yeah.
hard to avoid. And so part of that is that the heroes, especially the more powerful the hero, the more reactive they kind of have to be.
This is true. This is why I think Batman always leads to the best stories in some sense. I
Mm.
mean, that's a blatant statement, but that I feel like it's an easier thing to do with a character like that. A
Yeah,
character that is, that it, and Batman on the one hand, you're not going to see him taken down. He's
no,
never really on the back foot, except I guess in a few moments of the Nolan films. But like
but
for
it's so
some
much
reason,
easier
yeah,
to create the feeling that he's outmatched.
yeah.
And that's
You
an
also have
illusion,
Rogues
obviously, but
Gallery to work with. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I don't know. I mean, again, I think that Kristen Wiig's material here does sort of let her down, but the basics of it are very clear. That I think she plays it very well. We've seen it like a male version of this sort of villain arc
oh,
a
certainly.
hundred times.
Yeah, the Jim Carrey Joker was or Riddler was right in my mind
Yes,
for that.
that's certainly one. I think that the Jamie Foxx
Yeah,
Electro is essentially
hmm
the same thing. Um,
yeah. And to be fair, I don't think it's done much worse than either of those.
I
um, I do think that it's grafted into the story, and I don't think they figured out at all what to do with this character, other than be like, it's like Kristen Wiig, and she's jealous of Wonder Woman.
right.
Yeah, yeah,
I
that's
think
what
I
I've
was
read.
just.
Uh,
It was such a relief for me to go back away from Maxwell Lord's and being so confused and exhausted by trying to follow that, and then we go back to her, and now like she's whatever she's in the museum, and she's now the belle of the ball. Everybody was ignoring her before. I'm like, okay, I finally understand where I am and what's happening in this scene.
I
Uh,
like that. Well, I don't like this per se, but I thought it was funny that the way that Wonder Woman knows that Maxwell Lord is bad news is that he seems more interested in Kristen Wiig than her.
yeah, I
Like, wait
mean,
a minute, what are you saying? Yeah,
yeah. I mean, on the one hand, it's like absolutely true. um, There is if somebody walks into a room with Gal Gadot in it and is not like has an easy time tearing their eyes away, that is a sign that they're up to something. They've got ulterior. Um, she is, I mean, supernaturally beautiful. It's, but Kristen Wiig's, pretty good looking lady in her own right, and
Yeah. She's. I kind of have a little crush on Kristen Wiig.
yeah,
I wish she had a better thing. I wish she was actually playing a real character in this. I feel like this is, like you said, it's easy to understand Barbara Minerva in relation to everything else going on in this film, but it's not about her really. Like this is something that feels grafted on, and it's a shame because Cheetah is. I mean, I'm not a scholar, but Wonder Woman's arch nemesis, I believe. This is like one of the
I
most.
couldn't tell you.
This is like the recurring villain for Wonder Woman. This is her Lex Luthor essentially, and they had no take at all
Oh.
for her. Like it's
No, I mean
she's
they had a
barely even
take.
a bad guy. Like
They had a take. It was the jealousy of Wonder Woman, wishes to
yeah,
get the same powers, and you know, due to
yeah.
her history of abuse, is not capable of wielding them with compassion or whatever. And I don't know. I mean, I still think like the most effective emotional moment in the movie is when it just cuts back to her having reverted to human form. That was the one part of all the wishing and renouncing nonsense that actually like landed with me at all.
She's a compelling actress as well. I mean, this helps for me as I like Kristen Wiig and she did a good
Sure.
job. But because she did a good job, I wanted that character to work better. Like that character
Yeah.
to be what the movie was about to some extent. To actually be somebody I'd be interested in seeing again in a movie because her story was left in such a place that we could theoretically, but I mean, probably not, right? I don't think we're ever going to see Barbara Minerva again in the
It doesn't
DCU.
seem like it. I mean, I
Yeah,
think you could have. Yeah. I mean, you could have. There's enough of a redemptive thing here that she could have been an ally of
well, that seems
Thea's
to be the
going
thing that
forward.
that seems to be the kind of one of the good ideas of this movie is compassion for her enemies. Seems
Yes.
to be something they're going for very much here, and I mean, to some extent, that's all undercut by the Steve Trevor ghost soul possession thing, but that seems like an accident. Uh,
Yes.
it is a good idea, and I don't even mind, that these characters have redemption arcs as villains in a comic book movie, if that is what the movie's going for, and it has an idea about that, and I think it does. Uh, I don't think they're very successful. Like again, I don't know if Maxwell Lord loses anything by doing this. I don't know what happens to
Yeah.
him, and that's a problem.
Yeah, and I don't really buy the redemption for him.
Not really, no.
I buy it more for her. That I mean, because what she was doing is so much more understandable and
Well, until
less
she wishes to
grandiose.
be an apex predator. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I still kind of got that, but I don't know. It felt like I don't know. I was like looking, kind of checking my watch at the end when he's on the lawn hugging his kid, being like, "Ooh, it seems real late in the day to be going for he's not so bad after all." Twist
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, very much. Like, I mean, if him renouncing his wish was like, okay, I'm going to prison now, even that would have been something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, so we were trying to say something positive about it. I think.
We were, yeah, and like I don't know, I'm not really a big fan of this movie. I'm not going to see this again. Probably,
No, it's
it's
too long to revisit. Is another issue.
yeah, yeah, that's a big problem. They're going to make more Wonder Woman movies.
Yeah, I'll see the next one.
Yeah, for sure.
Uh,
I would watch the original again before I saw this again. But yeah, I don't have much good things to say about this. I guess at the end of the day,
I think the
it didn't make me angry.
no, it didn't really make me angry. It made me confused and a little frustrated,
Yeah.
but mostly it's fine. And Gal Gadot still basically works in the role, so I think that Wonder Woman 3, yeah, sure, absolutely, still on board. I really actually I one thing I did really genuinely love about this was the Man Out of Time stuff with Steve Trevor. As much as it's a retread of stuff we've seen with Captain America, just the amount of wonder that he brought to it is was something I found really delightful and refreshing. That
Chris
you
Pine's
know,
good. He's
uh,
real good.
when people go to the future in science fiction stuff, it usually tends to be a dystopian type of thing and a horror story or cautionary tale. But I think really there's something so great about how if we jump forward 30 or 50 years in the future, it doesn't have to be that long. It could still be in what what we expect to be our lifetimes. We'd still be surrounded by miracles that we take so for granted. Um, and this movie being set 40 years ago, also, it's not even our present day that is his future. So it's stuff we take even more for granted. But I don't know. That was a nice positive message.
Well, I mean, it's Blast from the Past or Encino Man even. I mean, it's a familiar kind of thing to do, and it usually works to some extent. Like this, it's something that you can kind of always do and get. Even something like Crocodile Dundee was successful because of culture shock. I mean, you
Yeah,
know, like it's like, well, I don't know how that works. I'm from the outback.
yeah.
That's it.
I'm from this pocket
I,
of reality where time does not exist. Is sort of the premise of Crocodile Dundee.
yeah. So I mean, it's a natural thing to work, and you've got an actor like Chris Pine. Possibly the best Chris. Uh,
Yeah,
it's gonna
I
work.
mean,
Yeah.
whatever. I like them all. I think I'm not really supposed to, but I don't care. I like them all. Um,
Name your best Chris. I want to hear it.
I get, it might be Hemsworth. Um,
I agree. I think Hemsworth's the best
I think
Chris.
he is. He's
Yeah.
he's. I watched his Saturday Night Live hosting performance in like 2015 with my stepson a week or two ago, and
Hmm.
he was just laughing his ass off at that. And I was like, this guy, his
Yeah, he's funny. He's funny.
comedic chops are just off the charts. It's incredible for somebody who looks like that, you know.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um,
Brings a lot to anything he's doing. Yeah.
but Pine, I mean, Wonder
Pine's
Woman 1
great.
really brought me around on Pine. I thought he got made that movie work because I don't care about the Amazons and Themyscira. I really didn't think we needed to see them at all in this one. Um, but all that stuff just it's nonsense and it's a little too straight faced for me. And then when he came along and they got the relationship going, that's when that movie kind of finally came alive to me.
It is kind of miraculous that stuff works as well as it does, to be honest. What do you think of the opening of this movie? The obstacle course sequence. It's
I,
they're dinging it online because it is not important. But I think
yeah,
it's
no, I
kind
don't.
of good. I kind of liked
Yeah, no, I again because I just Themyscira. I don't care about that. It's sort of
it.
it's sort of the thing. I mean, I'm a little bit that way in the Thor movies too, where he's not as most interesting when he's on Asgard, um, and we're neck
Which is
deep
a
in the
surprisingly
silliness and
often
stuff.
he's
Yeah.
often on Asgard. It's
Well, it
it's
makes sense in his movies would sort of be based around there. But he works best as a fish out of water, and I think she kind of does too. I mean,
hmm yeah.
and I don't know.
I mean, I guess this is kind of the same game they were playing in the first movie with her though. The
Yeah,
fish out of water stuff. You can always do fish out of water.
yeah. That's the fish out of water stuff is the funnest part. That of number one, and then now number two when they bring him back to the future. Um,
So, what do you want to see in Wonder Woman 3?
I don't know any of her other villains or
Yeah.
storylines that aren't Justice League storylines. I'm not a big DC scholar anyway, so I really only know the broadest strokes and a few Batman storylines.
Yeah.
Um,
She fights magicians a lot, that sort of thing. They're very much doing their own thing here. I almost kind of want to say, just do your own thing. Don't try to do, comic stuff if it's not of interest to you, like Cheetah.
yeah, I mean, I think superhero movies kind of live and die on their villains, and
mm, yeah.
so it's really going to depend. You got to find something that can be a challenge to her in some way. Um, I think she needs a supporting cast around her. I mean, that's true of all superheroes. Um, that
Well, they
that
had this
really,
trouble. They have a problem where if you're skipping through timelines, if she's a
yeah,
real
you have to
source,
start from scratch.
and they kind of bent the rules here anyway just to get Steve Trevor back in. So
Yeah,
that will be an issue going forward unless they want to go back in time or something. I don't know how they would even approach that. One of the best moments of this film was seeing her in New York with the Lucy Davis character in old age makeup in that
Yeah, I
picture.
liked that. That was a
Like,
nice little
yeah,
detail.
just having stuff like that fills out the universe and makes this, makes it all feel like a character that you're returning to, in a sense. So I don't know. I think leaning into that would be the way to go. I don't know how that works. I don't know what if you go to like, okay, 19 Wonder Woman 1928 something. She's up to something
Yeah,
there.
I don't know. I mean,
She's fighting Al Capone or something. I don't know.
I mean that's what, actually in the first movie they made such an effort to like build that sort of ensemble around her, and then like you said, you jump forward 50 years and they can't use any of them.
Yeah.
Like all of his Howling Commandos or whatever they were called in that case, and
Yeah,
the
that,
Lucy
that all
Davis
worked
character.
really good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
best part. I think maybe you know what I want to see. Wonder Woman 3, I think should be like a should rip off Thor Ragnarok if it's going to continue ripping off
Mm,
Marvel movies, and make it more of a team up thing, um, where that's sort of a Thor and the Hulk movie.
right.
So get somebody else in the mix there. I don't know if it's Cyborg, it's some other new character. It could be Hawk Girl for all I care. Um, but I think I tend to find these, especially these superpowered characters or Supermans and Wonder Womans, um, they can be pretty bland when they're on their own, in my view of things.
Well, that's
So
the DC curse in a sense. Like these characters are gods, so they're
yeah,
less relatable. They have less stuff that we're going to associate with them, beyond their godhood. They're just sort of costumes in a sense,
yeah,
and they're for a younger audience. I believe. I really do believe that at their core, the DC characters are kind of built for a younger audience, and therefore, when you try to age them up, it's just a little bit harder to do.
it's
To
strange that
make.
they've committed so much more to that. Then I mean, well, maybe that actually is a reflection. Never mind. Maybe it flows naturally out of how Marvel naturally pitched their characters at a very teenage level as opposed to a preteen level, um, and so that you don't have to mess with that very much because you can get adults to watch teenage stuff. But if you're trying to
Yep.
sucker adults into watching stuff that was made for 9-year-olds,
Oh, you can do it. The Harry
that
Potter films, but
yeah, that's true.
yeah, it can be done. Certainly now, On the other hand, yeah, it's just always going to be a little bit tougher. Yeah, it'll work a little bit harder, I think.
Yeah,
And you can overdo it. You can break it, as they did, I would say, with the Snyder films.
yeah. Um, okay, final answer. Wonder
Yeah.
Woman 3 goes to Mars, fights off an alien invasion. That's the introduction to Martian Manhunter. You know, if he pops, you give him his solo movie after that.
I mean, honestly, I'd be down with that. Like that sounds fun. Have her fight like some sort of cosmic menace. Something along those lines. And I mean, you're supposed to be making new gods movies about dark side and all that weird nonsense. That's theoretically still going to be an Ava DuVernay movie. Um, do that, lean into it, make that film,
Yeah,
I guess. But
make Wonder Woman 2084. Maybe
that'd be
they do
cool.
time travel stuff with the Flash all the time, right? So maybe she
Yeah,
gets thrown forward in time in the future.
or
Who
she's
knows?
just still alive. I mean, that could be. Yeah, I'm very down with that
Yeah,
actually.
I was gonna say
Like,
that makes it different, like harder to work with continuity because
well, they don't give a shit about
yeah,
that
but
though.
yeah, this movie clearly didn't give a shit about that.
And I actually think that's a good thing in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
end.
no, it is, it is.
Like
You're
I
right.
would say they go farther away and just say like, and have everyone be like, "Hey, it's Wonder Woman," like fuck it, who cares? Like we've already kind of erased the Snyder verse from canon, or that there's several canons at one time. I guess is what we're doing. What with Michael Keaton coming back as
I
Batman?
I don't
Uh,
know. I mean, I don't I don't really care at this
yeah,
point.
well, yeah, that's the thing. It would be a gift for me to not have to give a shit about that. For them to just be like, here, it's all one thing, and then maybe they're leaning into that, and I think that would be great, and maybe that's what they need to do to kind of do their own thing here and not worry about it anymore. Who cares that everyone in the world knows who Wonder Woman is after this film?
I think it is very cruel of Marvel to be doing their like Spider-Verse live action multiverse movie
I
right when
agree.
DC is
They're
sort
gonna
of
get it out in time before him too.
yeah, they're, they're going to beat the punch. There's the same thing they did with Civil War and Batman vs Superman. Like
This is like DreamWorks versus Disney animation
Yeah,
battles.
yeah.
This is like we're gonna
Uh,
make a fucking cartoon ant movie before you do. It's that kind of shit.
exactly. And it's like, if I were the DC, if I were the Warner Brothers executive, I think I'd be calling up Marvel, just begging, just being like, we have to do this. You don't have to do this. Let us have this one, this thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, you know what I want to see from the DC movies actually going forward? I will go back and watch the Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie if they announce that they're just doing like another standalone like Penguin movie that is like sort of aping Citizen Kane the way that Joker aped Taxi Driver or whatever, and
That would
they
be
just
great.
do every one of Batman's road galleries and is sort of like rip off homage to a classic auteur.
Oh, this is fun. What else we got here? Because yeah, Kane is definitely the Penguin film.
I mean, Riddler could be like I want it to be like a comedy version of a Christopher Nolan movie.
Be like Rafifi. Be like,
Repeatedly.
I mean, Catwoman is. I think that's an obvious, like double indemnity kind of thing, some sort of femme fatale.
Yeah, it's a Brian De Palma ripoff there. Clayface could be a Cronenberg ripoff. Yeah.
Two-Face.
A
Two-Face in the
They've
crowd.
done the serious version of Two-Face. Oh yeah, that could be a face in the crowd.
All the President's Men. Yeah.
Yes, I like it. I think Mr. Freeze is the Kubrick one.
Oh God. Wow, this is fun. They should do this.
Yeah. All right. We should wrap this up here.
Yeah, that's the end. That's
the end. It was a mess of a movie. It's a mess of a podcast. This is all the ending you get. Goodbye.